Jack it up.
Hurts keeps, Hurts cuts, Hurts has the first down, and Jalen Hurts might have just put it away for the Eagles. Touchdown.
Tyrese Maxey and the Sixers are going to win this game. Joel, tough turnaround in the lane. Another 30-10 performance for Joel Embiid.
Hurts connects with Devontae Smith.
Hey guys, hope you're having a good weekend. Figured we drop an episode here about the Eagles 2-5 scoop. It's me, James, and my buddy Asher. Asher, how you doing?
A lot better after that Monday night game.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking kind of Italian today, like really Italian.
I do. I feel even more Italian than usual.
Yeah. All right. Well, obviously we have a lot to talk about. Seems like I say that all the time now. But after such a huge game that was on Monday, we have to go into a deep dive on that because I think that kind of turned the tables on everything this season. But before we get into that, we might as well just review our hot takes, our picks, and you know how we did. Asher, how'd you fare out with yours?
After ending last week up 7-4, really did not do as hot this week. The only pick I hit was New England over Pittsburgh, and even that was a close game. I'm 0 for 2 on locks.
Yeah.
Cleveland blows that huge lead, and there goes my free 1 point. So,
Yep.
Not my week.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was kind of the opposite. I really did well. I knocked 3 of my picks. 2 of my hot takes hit, so that's a huge jump. And then my lock also hit. So my 2 hot takes, I had the Jets beating the Browns, so that came to fruition, and the Giants starting 2-0. So those happened, and then my lock was the Rams over the Falcons, and I had to sweat a little bit over that one. Got a little bit close at the end there, but you know. But as far as this week goes, we'll start off with our lock. So Asher, what's your lock for this week?
I've got the Chiefs over Indianapolis. Like I said, I'm 0 for 2 on locks. I feel like this is the lockiest of my locks, though. The Colts suck. The Chiefs don't. That's all there is to say about it.
Yep. I actually have the same exact lock. Right. So I literally had the same exact lock. I got Chiefs over Colts. I debated going elsewhere with it, but I think this is definitely the lockiest lock. Just like you said, lock is lock. As far as straight picks, what are your 2 straight picks?
So, I picked New England last week. That was my 1 pick that hit. I'm going to keep rolling with them. I got the Patriots over the Ravens. Okay. My other straight pick, I've got the Giants over the Cowboys. And that's just kind of wishful thinking. I know the Giants are division rivals, but I kind of like seeing them win.
That's hot take. That's hot take
territory.
Surprised you don't have that in hot take.
I went off the spread. The spread was close. They're playing in New York. So, I just like seeing Cowboys lose more than I like seeing the Giants lose. So that's a little bit of a wishful thinking pick as well.
Yeah. Very understandable. But Giants over Cowboys, I mean, I would love to see that happen. Even though it's both divisional rivals. But for me, my 2 straight picks is I have the Bengals over the Jets. Okay. I like the Jets last week. This Bengals team, they've been off to a bit of a slump this year, but I don't think that continues. I think they get their shit together and they kind of go at it like they did the end of last year.
You assume the slide has to stop at one point. This team
exactly. I think they got that at this point. So I got Bengals over Jets, and then I have Vikings over Lions.
Okay.
Always been a big Vikings guy. The Lions have showed a lot of grit this year. I mean, last week was iffy. They kind of let a little bit out. Like they let things slide against Washington more than what should have happened. Should have been blowout. But then against us, they did really well. So even despite that, I think the Vikings kind of bounced back this week. For his hot takes, finally our hot takes. Asher, you can spit me one, and then I'll go.
Yeah, I'll go on. I like that.
Yeah.
So I've got an Eagles hot take this week.
Ooh.
So we're gonna talk a lot about the Eagles this week, but I've got the Eagles winning against the Commanders, and I've got AJ Brown scoring 2 touchdowns just because he gets targeted so often and he hasn't scored yet. I feel like he's due for a couple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good hot take for me. Unfortunately, I did not do anything Eagles related. But my first hot take, it's very controversial, I guess. I have the Dolphins beating the Bills.
Wow, that
I
is
have the
hot.
that is like scorching hot right there. But I like the Dolphins head coach. I think what I saw last week was amazing, and I would argue Bills have a better defense, but I don't. I just feel like the Dolphins are at least going to cover the spread. I don't know what the spread is off the top of my head, but I know it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a shootout. But I'm not. I just have a feeling about the Dolphins. Tua last week really impressed me. He really seems to have evolved as a passer quite a bit, similar to our Jalen Hurts. We'll talk about that in a little while, but very, very impressive showing last week, and it's made me big believers in the Dolphins this week.
Yeah, well, the Dolphins definitely have a better chance against the Bills than the Titans do, and that was my hot take last week. Titans beating the Bills.
Yep.
Absolutely, that did not hit.
No, not at all.
The Dolphins are a better team, though. I think they've definitely got a shot.
Yeah,
Dolphins were unstoppable at times last week.
Yep, and also Derrick Henry wasn't doing anything really. So.
Yeah, that's
all
right.
Right. What's your next hot take, sir?
So Rodgers and Brady play for probably the last time in either of their careers. Very sad. It's going to be a fun game to watch just because of that, I guess like nostalgia factor.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think both of them have kind of come out the gate struggling a little bit. The Packers and the Bucs both have good defenses. I think the struggle keeps up. I've got Rodgers and Brady combining for 4 picks between the two of them.
Wow. Okay, I like that. I like that hot take. That's nice and spicy. For me, it's not really a hot take. If you were to hear this hot take at the beginning of the season, you would be outraged. You'd be like, "This isn't even hot." My hot take is Derrick Henry finally gets going this week, and he gets at least 120 yards on the ground. Similar to you last week, Asher. I thought you thought Derrick Henry was finally going to get going. I think this week, these two last outings by the Titans offense they rely on the run. I think they really need to become like solely running. I think they just need to make Derrick Henry their team. Don't try and throw it. Ryan Tannehill obviously fucking sucks. He got benched last week, so that's one thing. But I think they start really relying on the run this week, especially if they're going to be starting Willis, yeah, Malik Willis. If they're going to be starting him, especially with a rookie quarterback, I would not be surprised if they kind of relied more on the run this week. So Derrick Henry over 120 yards rushing.
Okay. So, I would definitely like to see it. Again, the same thing with the Bengals. You assume at some point he's got to get going.
Exactly. I mean,
good thing to bet on.
Yeah. I mean, a 1,500-yard rusher is always going to be a 1,500-yard rusher at the end of the day. Same thing with I like to apply this to baseball. A 250 hitter will always be a 250 hitter. They'll have their slumps, but they'll always go back to obviously what their average is as a player in their careers. I think, everything in it, like, unless you go through something drastic like an Achilles tear, I mean, I don't know. So, but I think Derrick Henry gets going a little bit this week.
Okay.
So that wraps us up with our hot takes.
Got a third hot take.
Oh, you have one more hot take? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. So the Denver Broncos I feel like they're getting a lot of hate, especially their head coach, Hackett. He just doesn't look like he knows what he's doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. They burnt me week 1. I picked him as my lock. They did not show up to play. But this week, I'm saying they find themselves. They're playing – I'm totally blanking on who they're playing. So they're playing the Niners. They're playing the Niners at home. The Niners are going through a quarterback change. Jimmy G's back. I say the Broncos find themselves and win by 2 touchdowns.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So it sounds like the storyline for like a lot of our takes this week is just people waking up.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a lot of these players, I think, at least as I know the Eagles didn't. A lot of players didn't even play in the preseason. They kind of just practiced. And the last real action they got was like just training camp or whatever,
Yeah, and I think a lot of this season we're still kind of basing off our preseason expectations. So you see the Bengals go 0-2, and you say, well, I just thought this team was going to be this good in the preseason or like going into the season.
Right.
I don't think this is who they really are.
Yeah.
By week 4, week 5, we'll figure out who's really disappointing this year and who just had a bad start to the season.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So that wraps us up. That actually wraps us up this time. So next, we talk about the Eagles. How about that game? Holy shit, dude. Holy 24-7. Hurts, he went 26 for 31 for 317 yards. He had 3 total touchdowns, 2 rushing, and a passing touchdown to Quez Watkins. I mean, the Eagles got 468 yards on offense and got 2 picks. At least, I think they got 2. Was it 3? They got 3 picks on.
3 picks, yep.
Yeah, so Darius Slay got two of those interceptions. He was a monster. He was everywhere, locking down Justin Jefferson, who's arguably the best, if not one of the best quarterbacks. Jesus, wide receivers in the NFL. There's so much to say about this game, and I've been so eager. We're recording on Friday, and this game happened on Monday. I've been thinking about it all week.
Yeah,
here we are. Asher, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just since you just mentioned Slay, I mean, he was all over the field. I think he had 5 pass deflections, those 2 picks.
Yep.
I mean, I remember there was the 1 dropped pick in the end zone. He easily could have had 3, 4 picks the way that he was playing that night.
Yeah, I mean, he had him like right here too. He had him right here. Remember the one? Yeah, the one was in the end zone. I think he was
diving forward.
Yeah, diving forward.
Hands. Yeah. But I mean, regardless of whether or not he dropped that pick, that still counts as a pass deflection. That's I can't remember an Eagles cornerback playing so well ever.
No, I mean, we're only 20 years old, so I think in our lifetime we have never seen anything like it. The closest is Asante Samuel.
Yeah,
remember Asante Samuel those days? But those were like when we were young.
I think I saw 1 full season with Asante Samuel.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we acquired him, but I know he was on. What, like 20? Was he on 2017?
2010, 2011. But I mean, regardless, it's been a while since we've seen good cornerback play.
Exactly. But yeah, for me, I mean, the defense is one thing, but I don't think we can go talking about the game without talking about Jalen Hurts. I mean, that's like really the storyline of the game of Jalen Hurts and how much he improved. I mean, 26 for 31 passing, isn't that like 83%? I mean, that's insane. Yeah. I mean, from a guy that we're regular seeing like hovering around 50%, 55%, seeing that, and not even that, like the stats don't even talk for themselves. What about the eye test? I mean, did you watch how? I mean, I was just talking last week about how Jalen Hurts has to be more present in the pocket and how he has to stand there with confidence and deal the ball. He did exactly that. I mean, it's almost like everything we talked about last week that we were like, okay, the Eagles, like, this is some things that I really want to see improve. Yeah. Everything improved. We were talking about more pressure from the defense, more coming out of the defense. You just went over all of that. They did remarkable. They did amazing. I don't know how many sacks they got, but I know they got a decent amount of pressure on Kirk Cousins. Really made him sweat in the pocket. And then Jalen Hurts, his accuracy, that bomb to Quez Watkins, dude. Oh my God. I was going insane. I was on the phone with my sister who just had a baby, and like I was just like screaming on the phone. I think he was holding the baby. And I was like, Jen, oh my God, what the fuck just happened? Yeah. Woke up the baby probably, but I'm teaching him well. Okay. He's gonna learn.
I mean, there was almost the whole game. It was just exciting play after exciting play. Like you said, the whole wish list got filled. Jalen Hurts looked confident. He looked poised. He looked decisive. I mean, I think there's something to be said about the Vikings just continually playing zone and kind of lining up 10 yards off the receivers and just letting Hurts pick his spots. But I think you go into that matchup as the Vikings defensive coordinator and you say this isn't a guy who can just stand in the pocket and make the right decisions and make the right throws, and he proved them wrong.
Exactly.
Should the Vikings have changed their game plan after he was like 14 for 14 with a touchdown?
Right.
Probably. And they didn't.
That was a Jonathan Gannon kind of move right there.
Yeah.
Typical Jonathan Gannon. But luckily we were on the other end of the spectrum of that. So.
Yeah. And Gannon, to his credit, did change the game plan.
He did. We have to note on that. Yeah. Credit to Jonathan Gannon for like what seems like the first time in his career, changing the game plan. He seems to like he changes it occasionally, but he always likes to go back to the old ways. So I hope this game plan like actually stays, because he likes to go back to that conservative.
Well, he played under Jim Schwartz, or he coached under Jim Schwartz, and that was one of the big staples of the Jim Schwartz defense was line up 7 yards off the guys, let them get their release. And, we had this game, we had our talented cornerbacks, our talented safeties jamming the receivers at the line, and you could see the difference. But the Vikings just looked uncomfortable the whole game.
Exactly. Justin Jefferson, must be noted that on Darius Slay, Justin Jefferson had 1 reception for 7 yards.
Yeah.
On 6 targets or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
5 or 6, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I can't, like you said, I can't even remember the last time we've had a cornerback that good. But let me just ask you a question. Are you more impressed by the defensive performance or the offensive performance in this game?
Defensive.
Defensive, why?
Holding that Vikings team, because I mean, we talked about it in our season preview. That Vikings team is very talented on the offensive side of the ball. And sure, you can say it's Kirk Cousins in prime time as much as you want,
right?
But we held that Vikings team to 7 points.
Yep,
incredibly impressive.
Yeah, and mind you, a week ago we just saw this Vikings team pick apart the Packers, which we all deemed to be one of the best teams in the NFC. But then we went and picked apart the Vikings, which brings. I'm going to answer the question. I was more impressive on the offensive side of the ball.
Okay.
I was more. I mean, the storyline this entire offseason, we talked about it week in and week out about Jalen Hurts. What's Jalen Hurts going to look like? You know, is he really going to take that next step as a passer? Those answers are like, if you're still questioning it after that game, I don't know. I mean, maybe you want more consistency. For me, I would like to see it again against the Commanders, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But I was for one very satisfied with what I saw on Monday night, and I was more impressed with the offense, how efficient it was. It wasn't just like a bunch of tosses or like run to the right RPOs. I talked about last week there was way too many RPOs. I feel like there were still run pass options, but I think Jalen Hurts kind of sat there for a second and really read the field instead of just running.
Right. Well, when the quarterback is making throws like that, it makes the RPOs so much more dangerous.
Right.
That's why when he was not as confident as he was and poised this week making the throws, it made the RPOs in week 1, like the Lions were able to read them and react very easily.
Yeah, exactly. Like everything about Jalen Hurts, I love. I was always on the edge about him. I think that game, I don't want to overreact, but I think that game, like it really struck me. Like, you know how you get that feeling about the team? Like there's a game every year, especially in football, where you like watch it and then you have like this feeling like, oh yeah, like we're good. You know, like I don't know if you remember the Eagles Super Bowl season back in 2017. Was there a specific game you could point out where you're
I was just gonna say when we beat the Broncos and we scored 50 points.
I was going to go before that. I was going to say on primetime on Thursday Night Football against the Panthers.
Okay.
I feel like that game really was like, all right, the Eagles are like for real.
Yeah, that was within a couple of weeks of each other. I think at that point in the season, the Panthers game, I think that made us 4-1 or 5-1. The Broncos game, I think we were 7-1, 8-1.
Yep.
So I mean, around when your team has 4 or 5 more wins than it does losses midseason, you're one loss. You're thinking, all right, this is the year.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, that vibe, that same vibe that the Panthers game or even the Broncos game gave you, that's the vibe I got from the Vikings game.
Okay.
That's kind of, I know it's really early. It's really early. But, I mean, the Eagles were just dominant. I feel like the score doesn't even reflect how dominant the Eagles were. I mean, they only won by 17.
Yeah.
You know? I feel like that game should have been a 38-7. Like, that felt like a 38-7 game.
Okay. That brings me to a point that I really the most intriguing point that I think for me. The Eagles win on primetime. They beat a Vikings team that just killed the Packers. I see a lot of power rankings just around the league, NFL power rankings, ESPN power rankings, Bleacher Report, whatever you want. A lot of them have the Eagles top 5, top 2 in the NFC.
Mm-hmm.
I've been an Eagles, like we said, we've been Eagles fans for 10, 11, 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
There's always the feeling in Philly like that season when we won the Super Bowl. We were underdogs every year in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
It's Philly against the world. No one likes us. We don't care. I feel like this is the first time that I've been an Eagles fan where I can confidently say that the Philadelphia Eagles are overrated.
Oh.
That hurts me to say, but it's been 2 weeks. I'm still not sold.
Still not sold.
I'm a cynical Philly fan. We've seen lots of disappointment from this team. I'm not thinking it's the year yet. I'm not there.
Okay. Well, I'm not saying it's the year. That's what I'm not saying. I'm saying like we're the real deal. Like we can compete. Like back in 2017, I didn't know we were going to win the Super Bowl. I didn't think we were going to win the Super Bowl. I thought oh damn, like we're one of the best in the NFC. That was my thinking. Like usually I'm so used to the Eagles being like mediocre, being like, okay, they're like a fringe playoff team, or like they'll win their division, but they might not do much after that. This team feels like they can win a division and do some damage in the playoffs, like win a playoff game, get to the divisional round. Maybe they'll lose then. Conference championship, I wouldn't go that far yet, but I think this team is capable of winning a game in the playoffs. As before the season, I wasn't so sure. I was like, all right, they can win the division, but I don't know if they'll do that much.
I mean, you've seen the media outlets talking about like Bills Eagles Super Bowl though.
Yeah,
Jalen Hurts is third in MVP voting. Like I just don't think I'm there yet.
Okay.
Are you?
Are you? I'm definitely closer to there than you.
Yeah,
definitely closer. I feel a lot more optimistic. I feel like a big like weight was lifted off my shoulders after I watched that game. I mean, I felt so good about it. I mean, Jalen Hurts. I mean, again, this is a Vikings defense that's like not bad. It's not bad. It's a pretty good defense.
No, they showed that against the Packers, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. And like they shut down Aaron Rodgers. Mind you, Aaron Rodgers didn't have one of his receivers, and he's working with like nobodies now. But still, Vikings defense is good, and Jalen Hurts went in there and like picked them apart. Could have a lot to do with the game plan, like you said earlier, but I'm not going to discredit how good the Vikings defense is. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say it's like best in the league, but it's above average, and I think credit needs to be, given to Jalen Hurts for doing that.
Yeah, no, the game he had was incredible. I don't want to downplay how good we played on Monday, and it wasn't prime time. It feels good to win on a national stage, and it does feel good to get that respect around the league, and for teams for the media to start saying, oh, maybe there's Super Bowl hype for the Eagles.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we scraped by the Lions by 3 points. This is a better Detroit team than we're used to. To be fair, they just beat the Commanders. We crushed the Vikings, but I mean the Packers always suck early, and the Packers are always bad week 1. So
always?
I don't know how much. Yeah, they just lost 38-3 last.
That's 2 years. You're saying that like it's always like, oh, the Packers always come into the season.
As of late. What I'm saying is I don't want to put too much stock into that Vikings-Packers game as far as judging how good the Vikings are. So I don't want to get super excited over beating what I think is like a mediocre team by 17 on prime time. That's where most of my reservations come from. Is I just don't think a win over the Vikings means that much.
Okay. All right. I mean, I've always been a believer in the Vikings. I mean,
I remember.
I said that earlier this episode. I've made it clear all off season that I'm a big believer in the Vikings. I think they can win that division, which is kind of why I'm like, oh wow, like the Eagles beat them. Like, holy shit. And we're like 2-0. I mean, that's a nice record. I mean, I don't know how long it's been since we have had a 2-0 record. Was it? I don't know what year it was, but regardless, it's been a while, I think. At least 6 years. At least 6 years.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I definitely remember the Super Bowl season we lost week 2 against the Chiefs. Past that, I can't recall.
Yeah, but regardless, it's been a while. So, I mean, it's nice sitting here at 2-0, 2 weeks in the season. Something that I'm not really used to. And again, the power rankings. I mean, I was shocked to see us ranked in the top 5. I was like, oh, like we might be like top 7, maybe top 10. I think we were top 10 preseason anyway. But seeing top 3, NFL.com had us ranked at 3. ESPN had a more realistic ranking. What I was expecting, we're at 7 on that list. But on most lists, like The Athletic, NFL.com, Fox, we're 3, 4, or 5. That's where we stand.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to seem ungrateful because I feel like this team after 2 weeks has been everything that we were expecting and a little bit more. But I just, I don't want to have Lombardi Trophy visions in my head after 2 weeks.
Yeah, no. I've been saying I'm not there. I'm not there yet, but I'm closer. I'm like, okay, I could see this team winning a game in the playoffs. I'm starting to have like conference championship, like playing in the conference championship, like
Okay.
Those kind of visions. That's what I'm having. I'm like fantasizing about like an Eagles versus Packers NFC Championship or some shit. I don't know. Like that's what I'm envisioning right now after watching that game on Monday night.
So now that we've established we're not quite Eagles are a top 3 team in the NFL yet.
No.
Is there anything that they can do versus the Commanders? Again, maybe the same issue we have with the Vikings and the Lions. How good are they? Is there any game we can have versus the Commanders where you'll be convinced?
So this game against the Commanders, while a loss, like I wouldn't be mad at a loss. It just depends on how we look. Like for Wentz could have his head steaming and he can come in. I mean, I don't want to underrate Wentz. Wentz is a good quarterback. Statistically, he's been good. He just doesn't come up in big moments sometimes. He's like a Kirk Cousins. But he's still a very good quarterback, and I don't want to underrate that. So if we lose, I wouldn't be surprised. It's a division game. We always struggle against Washington, especially as of recently. We always struggle against Washington. Usually it's at the later end of the season. So, I mean, who knows? It's always Washington.
Yeah.
But the game that I want to look for is it's kind of a prove it. If we win this game, we win this marginally, I think that'll kind of put a staple into it. I'm not going to, again, I wouldn't be Super Bowl because it's against the Commanders, not that impressive of a team. But I definitely would be like, okay, like this team, like we go in there and we pick apart Washington, even more so than we did the Vikings, then I'd be like, all right, like this is – like I'm thinking like if we win by a couple touchdowns, like a 31-17 game or like a 31 to like 10 game, like around that range. Like if we win by that margin and the offense looks just as efficient as it did and everything, that's what goes into it for me.
Yeah, I think beating the Commanders by 21. Good teams, the teams that get it done in the playoffs, get it done versus the bad teams.
Exactly.
Good teams beat bad teams every time. We have to win this game by 3+ touchdowns for me to be convinced that this team's for real.
Yeah. I mean, I would be surprised.
I know we do struggle against the Commanders.
Mm-hmm.
But the Eagles teams that have struggled against the Commanders are the Eagles teams that go 8-8 or 9-7 and lose in the first round of the playoffs in years past.
You're right. Like that Super Bowl season, we swept them and we destroyed them both times. So exactly. You got a point. You've got a good point. So I think I'm going to agree with you. I think my margin's a little bit lower. I think 14-17, 21 would be great, but 14-17. If we score 30+ points, that's like kind of like the thing. If they score upper 20s to 30 in points, I'd be okay with that. They just have to win by a margin of 2 or more touchdowns.
And Jalen Hurts has to look more like week 2 Jalen Hurts than he does.
Not week 1. We don't want week 1 Jalen Hurts. We don't even want a hybrid between the two. We want week 2 Jalen Hurts. That's all I want. I want you to be confident. I want him to get the ball out quickly, make plays happen with your feet. Do everything like you did last week. That's all. That's everything. That's great. Fantastic. Accuracy. Everything.
Boys confidence. We talked about this extensively in the offseason. The Eagles team, I remember the one episode when you said when you were flabbergasted that I was thinking Super Bowl for this team. If Jalen Hurts takes the next step, if he continues to play like he did in week 2, that's the kind of quarterback that's going to take this talented Eagles roster to the Super Bowl. I guess that's my biggest question is I'm not sure he's going to be that Jalen Hurts every week.
Yeah.
This is a big prove-it game. It's a divisional rival. You just played well last week. You played okay in week 1. Show you're taking steps, and that wasn't a fluke.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was going to say that exactly. This week's a prove-it game. They just need to come out and show some consistency. Really, this week and next week is like probably the next few weeks is where we kind of see teams find their identity. Are we good? Are we bad? Are we mediocre? Are we a fringe playoff team? Can we really contend in the conference? I think the Eagles, I mean, as far as the outlook for the rest of the season, after Monday's game, I think we do need to take a step back and kind of rethink we've kind of gone over a little bit, but realistically in your mind, like how do you see this season playing out? if Jalen Hurts comes out and plays like he did, shows his week 2 self week in and week out, give or take, what do you think this team could wind up in that instance?
Yeah, so I mean the Cowboys now without Dak for a couple weeks. You expect the Eagles to be a shoo-in for that divisional title, but they did just beat the Bengals. So I'm thinking if we lose to the Commanders week 3, there's a very real chance that even without Dak, we're still fighting for that divisional title,
Mm-hmm.
I think we come back next week after a loss versus the Commanders and we're thinking instead of talking how far in the playoffs is this team going to go, we're thinking what does it look like for this team to make the playoffs? That becomes the question. Are we going to get there? So I think this is a big kind of hinge week. Week.
I feel like this is a big a week with big implications.
Yeah.
Already. I mean, it's week 3, and we're already talking about big implication games. Mind you, the Vikings game might be useful too. Getting that win could get us a tiebreaker if we're doing a wild card.
That's true. Yeah.
Don't count out the Packers. I know I like the Vikings to win that division. Sorry,
I feel like at the end of the season we're always like the past couple of seasons when we've been fighting for those wild card spots as opposed to the divisional titles. It's always the Vikings are one of the teams that we're racing against.
Yeah, exactly. So if it comes down to that, at least we have a tiebreaker for that. So if again, I don't think we'll get to the question if the Eagles will make the playoffs. I mean, the NFC is pretty strongly at the top. You got the Bucs, you got the Packers, and then the Cowboys aren't really in there because we'll be competing for the division with them. I think that's a pretty sure thing. At least we'll be competing, if not blowing out, like you said. But what I'm trying to say is that the NFC is really weak, and I think the Eagles wouldn't really have too much of an issue unless something went really wrong, like a Jalen Hurts injury, or something like that. Then we could be talking about like, oh, what does this team have to do, to make the playoffs? I think the Eagles will make the playoffs. I don't doubt that.
So a big loss versus Washington this week doesn't scare you?
It doesn't scare me. No, I think the Eagles have a weak enough schedule. The Eagles, again, this year, we were gifted a really easy schedule. So I think I would not be happy. Don't get me wrong. I would not be content with a loss against Washington.
You're not pushing.
If it's one of those like gritty divisional matchups, and we lose on like a game-losing field goal or something like that, like I wouldn't be. I mean, I would be mad for an instant, but then I'd be like, all right, well, like it's a division game, whatever. Shake it off, move on. We have a long season.
Yeah. No, definitely, I agree. A week 3 close divisional game doesn't make me want to push the panic button.
No,
but I mean, if Jalen takes a significant step back and we lose by multiple scores, maybe we'll reevaluate.
Right.
But we'll talk about that next week.
Yeah, we will. As far as your prediction for this week, who do you like in this matchup with the Commanders? And what do you really think is going to happen? What are we looking at this week?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, one of my predictions is A.J. Brown scores 2 touchdowns. I also think I love the way that the ball was being spread out last week, whereas it was kind of being funneled into A.J. week 1. I think this week Devonta had 7 catches, something like that. So Jalen was really spreading the ball around. I think Devonta probably scores a touchdown this week. I would, like I said, how much this week hinges on Jalen Hurts. I do believe in him. I think that he is going to show up this week. I think he's going to be more similar to that week 2 Jalen, maybe 2-3 touchdown passes, and I feel like he's usually good for a rushing touchdown as we get closer to the end zone.
Yeah, so I like your thinking. I agree with you. I think this game's going to be – I think the Eagles will come out. Like the first quarter might be a little rough. You'd be like a little puzzled, thinking like, oh, like what happened to the team last week? I think we might see some Jonathan Gannon going back to his old ways, letting Wentz take some chunks out of us. But I think ultimately the Eagles will, really, really start going off like they did against the Vikings. I think they might get a couple. I think they'll get a couple picks off of Wentz, and I'd like Miles Sanders this game rushing wise. I like him. I think he's going to get over 100 yards rushing. We might see a similar thing with Miles Sanders and A.J. Brown both having a lot of yards. I like A.J. Brown getting a lot here. Dallas Goedert, I feel like this is going to be kind of a week. This is one of my hot takes. Whatever. Extra hot take. Dallas Goedert scores a touchdown. I'd like Dallas Goedert. I think Jalen did a really good job, like you said, dispersing the ball. And Dallas Goedert gets a touchdown this week. That's what I feel like happened. But I think it's going to be like a 31-17 win.
Yeah, I'm feeling a lot of offense this week. I think that we really have found our groove.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I mean, we found our groove last year. I think it's more of the same thing this year, except Jalen Hurts is just a better passer.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, that should wrap us up for this week. We will catch you guys next week. We'll be doing an Eagles episode and a Sixers episode. Preseason for the Sixers is rapidly approaching, so we got some stuff to cover there. And that should be it. You can follow us down on our social medias, on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. It's all right there for you. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and thanks for tuning in.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.
See you.